All right, we're going to try this again. Maybe, maybe. All right. I don't know what's going on here. So what we're going to do is try it again. Try it again. Try it again. It's working. Yes. Success. I'll tell you what, this stuff is frustrating. You'd think after all this time I'd have all this stuff figured out, right? That had to be a YouTube thing because I didn't do anything. I just restarted the new live. But okay, now I'm listening to myself talk, so I'm gonna get rid of that. All right, all right, we're back. Now we can talk. So if you got questions, fire 'em at me. Now that you can hear me. Hello from Central Missouri. Hello from Seattle. Hello to all those people that were asking me and saying hello earlier. I missed it. Bummer. Yes, it's smoky here. You can see that it's kind of haze. Well, it's kind of white behind you. It's not as smoky as it looks. But all those Canadian wildfire smoke, all that smoke is coming down to us. So I've been really tired lately. Makes me think maybe that's sucking in all that smoke is not good for you. I don't know. All right, guys, got questions. How are you? Just wondering, do beef cattle get regular hoof checks like dairy cattle? My family are beef farmers here in New Zealand, and they said they rarely get issues. Beef cows generally not, because most of the time those animals are raised on pasture, right? So they go through a natural shedding process where that hoof horn will actually fall away on its own. So in those cases, the hoof angles stay the way they're supposed to. They don't get long toes. And because of that, because they're that and they're on soft ground, they don't get the hoof problems. A lot of the hoof problems that you see me working on. So, how often do you cut yourself when you first started learning trimming? Um, More than I do now, but every now and then I still. Oh, you can see. Oh, maybe you can see that one little nick right there. I did that the other day, so it still happens every now and then, but not too often anymore. Back then, I was a lot more well, I wouldn't say cautious is the word. I tend to be, yeah, more cautious back then just because I hadn't done it, so everything was very slow. Now I have the opposite problem where my hands kind of do their own thing. I don't even have to really think about it. So it can happen if you're not. What ends up happening, the way that cuts usually happen, is you'll be in a piece of hoof horn that is thicker, and then you'll hit like some stuff near the heel bulb where that knife will then zip right through, and that's where you can run into problems. But that's most of the time when I cut myself. Favorite part of your job? Mm, Getting to see different people every day and working on new farms, seeing the animals, that kind of stuff. The work becomes very monotonous, especially after 23 years. Like I said, I don't even have to really think about it. My hands just do the work. So I'm kind of in my own head most of the time. How many days a week are you trimming cows? So that varies. This in the wintertime, I'm going to probably trim 3 to 4 days a week, depending on the temperatures. In the spring and fall, I'll work 5 to 6 days a week because in the spring and fall, I'm working on the smaller farms doing whole herd trims. So those I do them in the spring and fall to avoid ice. So I work more then. Did you get a new trimming chute? Not too recently, about, well, 2.5 years ago now. About so I still call it my new chute, even though it's not. What's it smell like over there? Over here? You mean smoke wise? Because of that? Because of the wildfires? Yeah, we got the smoke smell in the air. But on the farms, if it's you're talking about farm smell, I don't even notice it. Don't even notice the farm smells. I know you normally trim cattle. What else have you trimmed, or would you like to trim? Says Jeremy Stevens. The only other thing I would attempt to trim maybe a goat or a sheep. I'll avoid the donkeys and horses. but I have trimmed one goat in my life. That's it. Nate, have you played RDR2? I'm gonna say no because I don't even know what that is. So yeah, no. I'm gonna go with no. You ever get called to work on horses? No. I used to get called to work on yaks and oxen every now and then, but never horses. So there's a lot of farriers around, and they're trained to trim horses, where I'm not actually trained to work on horses. No questions here. Just here to say you're an icon. Wow, that might be an exaggeration, but I appreciate it. Thank you. How did you have the guts to eventually go out on your own? Well, I just took the step. I was Part of it might have been that I was 23 years old and still had a little risk in me at that point. So I was like, ah, why not? I got nothing to lose. Just got done with college. I wanted to own my own business and I wanted to work on farms. I actually wanted to farm, but didn't want to take on the financial responsibility of farming. So um, this was actually a perfect fit. So I kind of felt comfortable doing it, and I kind of wanted to do it. So there was more. Usually, if you're worried about something, that you're having these questions that jump into your mind that are trying to talk you out of something. I wasn't like that. Everything that I was thinking about was pushing me toward it. So I just did it. Do you watch or talk to other trimmers in YouTube? On YouTube, other hoof trimmers. Oh, YouTube trimmers. I have talked to pretty much all of them at some point. Yep. Um, why don't cows get shoes like horses? So, horses get shoes more so to protect the bottoms of their feet, right? So, if there's wear situations, if they're putting on a lot of miles, um, that's going to protect problems from the bottom of their hooves. Now, you might see the problems that we're working on and think that they're on the bottom of the hoof because that's what I'm trimming on. But in actuality, those are pressure related problems that are happening on the inside of the foot, and it's the pedal bone on the inside pushing down on that corium that causes those problems. Yes, they manifest themselves out the bottom of the hoof, but they're actually internal problems. So it's not the cows aren't getting these because of the of stepping on things or putting rocks into their soles or chipping their feet like a horse would. It's problems due to pressure and due to being on concrete. Now, there might be something, if you could find a way to keep the rubber blocks on hooves, just that cushioning might help, but you would need to replace them often because that it would grow. The rubber block would grow down with the toe. It would make then there would be no wear anymore with those hooves, no natural shedding, and they would get out of place quickly. So you'd have to trim the cows a lot more and replace those blocks a lot more. So the cost would be outrageous. But are you from Wisconsin? I am. I live just outside of La Crosse, Wisconsin. Yep. Oxen sometimes get shoes. They do. Yep. Yep. But their oxen are workers, right? Pulling things, heavy things generally. So you apprenticed to learn how to do this. That's exactly how I learned. It wasn't necessarily called an apprenticeship. In fact, I actually paid to do it, but in all intents and purposes, that's what it was. I worked with him every day. He taught me how to do it. How to trim, how to deal with basically everything related to hook trimming. Wayne Went's guy's name, by the way. Plainview, Minnesota is where he's from. Um, and then he let me work on some of his farms to get some experience in live farm settings on my own. So that was pretty cool. So that's how I learned. I trained for about 3 months with him full time, and then transitioned to all myself on my own business. Have you ever had any bad injuries from cattle? Yes. Knife injuries. I had a bad knife injury on my thumb years ago, about a year and a half into me trimming. We were just talking about knife stuff earlier, or accidents. I had a grinder injury where a beef cow came behind me in the chute and I didn't see her coming. And we both went out the door and I laid a running grinder onto my arm and tore it up. And then I got stepped on by a cow in a pen, and I thought I broke my ankle, but it ended up being just a severe sprain. But It took me, I was out of commission. I couldn't hardly walk for about 2 weeks after that. So that was actually the most, I would say, uh, made me think about what I was doing a lot more with that particular injury. That was just a couple years ago, actually. Do heavier cows have more foot issues based on pressure? Yes. Even so, a bigger cow, a heavier cow obviously has the same size footprint, and that means there's going to be more weight on that. So, and generally speaking, if they're overweight, that means they got other stuff going on. They're probably being fed heavily, so that can also lead to hoof problems. So, all of that combined. But yes, a Jersey is going to tend to have less hoof problems than a Holstein, pressure problems, just based on size, not because of anything else genetically speaking. Hello, were you near where the tornado hit up there? There were lots of tornadoes. I was gone when that happened in June. I was in Italy on vacation, but they came. Yes, the neighbor actually filmed them right across the road as they were dropping. There's two of them dropped out of the sky within. One was about less than a quarter mile from my house, and one was about 2 miles from nothing, no damage here. It didn't. They didn't really do much for damage in general. Tore some steel off the top of some barns, but that was about it around here. With your constant rotations, do you ever get to take time off? I do, but I have to plan it. I have to start planning it as far as the way I'm trimming about a month or two ahead of time because I get got to get all of those farms lined up. And then what ends up happening is I'll trim like crazy for a week or two right before and bunch all those farms up, and then that'll free up my schedule to be able to leave. But it's difficult to do. When I first started trimming, or when I first transitioned to this area, I was running two routes, two basically full time trimming routes, and that if it were to happen at that point, I couldn't take any days off. I literally trimmed 30 days straight, um, and was just I ran myself ragged, and that whole fall. So now at least I have some time where I can move. But it's good because chasing kids around with other stuff, you need to have some time off. Is it just you behind the camera, or is there a whole team? It is just me, nobody else. My son helps me trim in the summer months, helps me get cows in and stuff like that. But as far as the editing, I do it all myself. The camera work is me. The trimming is me. The voice is me. All of it. I probably should have people helping me, but I don't. Uh, hello, Candy. You go to World Dairy Expo. I have gone to World Dairy Expo. Am I going to go this year? That's first week in October, possibly. We got to see. Maybe. That's a hard maybe. Love watching your videos. Thank you, Justin. You're definitely a professional when doing your job. Thank you. You ever save a cow? Do you ever save some of the cow hooves in a jar or container? No, I don't. Actually, I do save them unintentionally in the pockets of my coveralls that end up getting tracked basically from where I take them off throughout the house. And having the end journey be in the lint trap in the dryer generally. Ah, Caden says, "Cool. What inspired you to start filming your work then?" I saw a hoof trimming video on Facebook, and basically it depicted hoof trimming as torture. And I thought, well, that these nobody's going to actually believe that this is a torture machine. That's a hoof trimming shoot. So I clicked on it, looked on this in the comments. In the comments, there was thousands, literally thousands of comments of people that were outraged by just the fact that this machine even existed for torturing cows. And I'm like, oh, good lord, this we got to people just don't know. We got to educate people, figure out, let them know what's happening so that they can and why these problems happen that we have to work on cows so they understand it better. So that was kind of the motivating factor to do it. Along with, I always kind of wanted to have a YouTube channel. So now, did I think that anyone was going to watch hoof trimming? No. It still baffles me that people watch, but I'm thankful. I'm thankful. If you get tired, just try a salicylic acid wrap. Yeah, I don't think that'll help. think I don't. Now, might make me sneeze. Put it that way. Wanted to ask, in light of recent floods, well, where to go? In light of recent floods, are you seeing more or fewer hoof problems? So, generally speaking, the cows that I work on are indoors, so their floodwaters are not going to affect them too much. When it comes to wet conditions, though, yeah, um, you're going to have more hoof problems in general, just because the hoof is going to be softer and it's going to have a tendency not to wear, which means that hoof then can get out of position. So a lot of times when you have a wet summer, I'm going to spend time going. I'm going to get more calls for cows that are out on pasture that are starting to get long toes, or beef cows that get long toes because of that. And then they're also softer as well, so they're going to be more prone to problems just from that. Beer 30, root beer 30. I should be drinking. It is beer 30 though. This is a Twigs root beer. See that? You see it? Yep, Twigs. And yes, it's diet to keep my girlish figure. Yeah, Twigs is a Wisconsin company out of Shawano. They also, if you, they have a whole line of their own beverages like this. They also bottle Sundrop, which if you're from the Midwest, you know what Sundrop is. It's kind of has a cult following here. So, what would you do if you find your own picture on a pavement in the middle of nowhere? What would you do if you find your own picture on a pavement in the middle of nowhere? That would be awesome. Why? Have you seen my picture somewhere? You have. Take a picture of it. That'd be cool. Like the Hollywood Walk of Fame, only on the sidewalk somewhere. That'd be cool. Yeah. Vancouver Island. That's cool. I know a guy that goes and trims there. Actually, I know of a guy. I don't actually know him personally. Do you ever mess up your own toenails and be like, "Dang, I should know better"? Believe it or not, yeah, not my toenails necessarily, but my fingernails. Yeah, when I trim them back a little too short sometimes. That's exactly what I think too. I'm like, oh, I should do better, right? I shouldn't make that mistake. You just want to though, right? You see a little bit of white left on there, and you figure it can come off. Believe it or not, that's can happen with beginning hoof trimmers too. Same idea. So is a license not required in your profession? In the United States, nope. There's no professional certification required to become a hoof trimmer. Now, you really do need to take courses and learn though correctly, at least from a professional. Otherwise, what you're going to end up with is, you know, situations where you're doing things that you shouldn't do, and you're going to end up damaging cows and killing your potential career because of that, right? Simple, just learning the basics, whether it be from a professional trimmer or through a course, is going to help prevent causing severe damage to a cow. So I would never try to attempt to trim one on your own without at least some of the basic ideas of what's going on there. Among all the YouTubers, you're the one that shows affection towards the cows. Have you ever noticed it? Have I ever noticed from the cows? The cows don't. Usually, the reason I work the way I do is because I always try to put myself in the cow's position. As if, you know, if someone was working on something on me and it was that sore, I certainly wouldn't want to be rough with it, right, or anything like that. So I'm always conscientious about pain and things like that. So I'm trying to work as carefully as I can. Um, I don't. The cows, I'm not sure necessarily appreciate having their hooves trimmed. You might see them look back and stuff in the videos, but I think that's more a reaction to the hoof trimming shoot itself. Like, what was that? What just happened there? More so than appreciation, right? But I think in the end, they probably do appreciate it when they figure out their feet feel a lot better. Would you be obliged to putting a link of where you got your tools in the channel description? Sure, I can put a link in there. If you want to get a look at a lot of hoof trimming tools in general, where I purchase all of my hoof trimming stuff, as far as the tool wise, I get that all from Armor Animal Health, is what it's called. There's a location in Wisconsin here, ships next day. Also, Leadstone is in Minnesota. They also ship. They ship same day, so you'll get it the next day here. So that's where I get all of that stuff. Salicylic acid I get on Amazon, but yeah, I can throw some links in. Put those, have those up in my comments. Um, Maybe FEMA needs to add resources to screen the beef extra at those high water summers. Good to know. Thanks. Yeah, I mean the beef is going to be fine. It's just the biggest thing with floods and cattle is making sure they have enough feed, right, or they don't get washed away. But that's the biggest thing. Their feet will be fine. You know that once the water's receded, they'll go back to normal hydration and not have any health problems once they get back to normal. Any word on the screw worm making it to the U.S.? Are farmers worried? I have not heard anything about it, so I'm going to say no. At least not in my circles. Maybe in beef circles, I don't know. Um, a lot of those parasites, a lot of the parasites are, we say, controlled in these confined facilities, just because you don't want to have you don't want to have these. A lot of those are fly related, and flies are kept under control just because they can cause a lot of problems when cows are on concrete. The cows are bothered and harassed when they're laying down, and they're going to stand up, and that ends up causing feet problems. So they fly control is a big thing on a lot of the dairies. So that's probably not going to be a problem as far as what I do as trimming dairy cows, but maybe. And I'm not familiar with it, so it could be a completely different mechanism of you know transmission or spread. But when you trim down to the corium, how long does it take to go back to normal? So the hoof horn grows at about a quarter inch a month as far as depth wise, right? What's happening is small, very thin layers are deposited continually, so that grows out. So in the course of a month, you're going to get about a quarter of an inch of new growth. So when I take that, that's why you hear me say when I put a block on it, that block needs to stay in place at least a month, and most of the time, and that's because it takes a month's worth of growth to get that sole to a quarter inch thick, which is enough to then support weight. I like to when I'm trimming cows, I like to keep them at least that's a bare minimum as a quarter inch. I prefer to be 3/8 or more as far as sole depth, just because if we can get that sole, the thicker that sole is, the more rigidity it has, and the less likely you're going to have problems as far as a compromised sole, right? So that's kind of the point behind that. But Carrie Ranello says hi. Hello, Carrie. That is my wife. It's interesting that she's in here. She's in the chat. So anyway, yeah, about a month as far as to get that hoof depth to where it's supposed to be again. Uh, my 6-year-old daughter wants to be a cow vet at the moment because of you. Thanks for your videos. That is awesome. I think she should be that. I think she should. There is a shortage of large animal vets currently, believe it or not. The large animal vets here have to cover a long distance, and especially equine vets. There's a big demand for equine vets. Ask my daughter. It's hard enough. We've got a horse, and the nearest one is about a half hour, 40 minutes away, and there's only one around. So, well, there's a couple around across the river. Has a cow ever injured you? Yes, been injured, been stepped on and injured. I've been kicked and injured, not terribly by kicked. Jammed fingers and grinders because of cows, grinder injuries or knives injuries because of cows, but not directly from the cows. How is the apprentice industry? Are there classes where people can learn to do what you do? Yes, there are classes. Aaron Lavoie. So if you follow any of the YouTube trimmers, Aaron Lavoie, the Midwestern hoof trimmer, has a course. Different types of courses that you can take as far as um, short courses, a couple days, to longer ones where you can get some more time too. I don't think he does anything more than like a week, maybe 4 or 5 days. But anyway, yes, you can. He has courses, and then, like I said earlier, the best way to that I think to do it, the best way is to find another professional hoof trimmer somehow, whether it be through another dairy in your area, or if you work on a dairy, meet some guys and then get trained to trim that way. The plus side with that is you can get, as you're learning to trim, you can get a lot more reps when it comes to working on your hooves, right? So the more times you do it, the better you get, and it's great to have someone that can guide you in the process, let you know if you're making a mistake, if there's something you need to adjust with what you're doing, and then guide you through some of those tougher problems that you don't see every day, and you're probably not going to see in a short course. So that's the best way to do that, in my opinion. But yeah, there are courses. There's some in Ontario, there's some in California. There's some, like I said, Aaron Lavoie teaches. There's actually a couple in Wisconsin. Aaron Lavoie teaches one. But yeah, they're scattered around. Just kind of do some digging to find them. Do small cow breeds like Highlands have similar problems as dairy cows? Probably similar, yes, but not to the frequency because they're not on concrete and they're not as big, right? So they're going to have the same types of things affect them, especially if they're on pasture. They're going to have tend to have a lot of the same pasture problems that a Holstein, say, would, or pasture related causes like toe necro or not foot rot or foul. The That bacteria lives in the soil, so it really has nothing to do with the size of the animal. In that case, those are infectious type of diseases, and those are all it takes is a break in that skin in that interdigital space, and that can set in. So, yeah, even a miniature Highland could get it. What kind of ground is best for cows? What should you stay clear of for the cow's hooves? So you don't want a lot of rocky, uneven terrain, right? And you want something that drains well. Generally, you want the reason I say a soil that drains well, a clay soil is going to be slippery. And if you have a lot of rocks and stuff in there and uneven paths, you can cause damage to the hooves that way. But you want a well drained soil so that the hoof responds the way it should to the natural environment, where it can pick up moisture and get rid of moisture as it's supposed to, and that is going to facilitate the natural trimming process, or the what naturally keeps the cows trimmed. Right? If that hoof can hydrate and dehydrate normally, then it'll fall away, and she'll keep her normal hoof without having to be trimmed. That's how animals in the wild, why hoofed animals in the wild don't need to be trimmed, is because those hooves are taking care of themselves. And if there is a bad hoof problem, they probably succumb to it, right? They become prey animals. Ah, you listen to me for hours with that lovely, soothing voice. I get sick of hearing my own voice, believe it or not. Editing videos, I don't like it. It was one of the things that held me back from making videos for a while, was listening to the sound of my own voice, or being self-conscious about my voice. So it's interesting that people enjoy it. I like that. Where are you from? I am from Wisconsin, near across Wisconsin, just outside. The heaviest animal. What's that? Did I miss the first part of that question? Heaviest animal that I've trimmed? Probably 2,200 pounds, I'd say, somewhere in there. Bull. I don't like to trim bulls just because, especially ones that big, just because they don't fit in my chute very well. Hello from Sweden. Hello. Looking forward to the next one soon. New video, hopefully tomorrow. If not, it'll be there on Saturday. It'll be done. I get it done tonight. Depends on how long I talk to you guys. Uh, what's been your biggest mistake when trimming? Mm, I don't know. I try to keep my mistakes small. If that makes sense. So I don't know that I haven't had anything that was catastrophic from trimming. Um, Yeah, I'm not sure. Nothing terrible. I mean, you might like when you're trimming, you might nick corium and stuff, but that's not something that you might delay the healing process, right? If you're adding damage to the corium, which is already sensitive, but it's not going to be life threatening or anything like that. So when I first started trimming, I always thought everything I worked on could potentially turn into something terrible, right? So I was always nervous of that. But generally, if you're careful, you're not going to do too much damage if you're trained, right? If you're not trained, yeah, you can do a lot of damage because there's that, like I say, that the corium is sensitive. It's a sensitive tissue that creates what the hard hoofworm that they have to walk on. So if you damage that, yeah, you could cause problems. My grandfather used to keep 100 head of black Angus. My uncle had some jerseys for milk. Yep, that's a pretty large beef operation for older generations, anyway. Where did you learn your terminology? You talk like a medical professional. Just years of reading it and doing it and learning and reading research and things like that. So I wouldn't say, yeah. I mean, it might seem like it's a lot of medical terminology, but there's really in hoof trimming, it's pretty low. I would say it's focused, right? So there's not a lot. There's a lot of different problems, but they generally all result from the same types of things. And once you kind of learn the basics of how the hooves work, you can figure it out. Maybe I just make stuff up. You'd never know. That's the beauty part about this, right? I'm, I could just pretend like I knew something. Yeah, it's real. You can look it up. I'm not making things up. So yeah, why don't you wash the feet? Probably the most common question. Well, because if you washing the feet doesn't really help, doesn't change what I'm going to do or improve the situations that I'm working on, right? So, and I can't actually rinse the lesions out anyway until I get the horn removed. So it's like a wasted step. I know people want it to be pretty and want me to have everything clean, but hoof trimmers in general don't wash feet because it's a wasted step and it causes it can put the you're in a compromised position with everything wet when you're dealing with sharp knives, power tools, a shoot that's electric, right? There's something wrong with that. Cows are sensitive to electricity, so in general, I try to keep my work area, as dry as possible. Uh, that's why I'm not spraying water. I'll use chlorhexidine at the end to rinse the lesions out, clean them really well when I'm done. But as far as getting everything wet, I don't. What am I drinking this time? We are drinking, you see that, Twig's Diet Root Beer since 1951. It's actually quite good for a diet. It's a delicious diet root beer. Was there ever a video you never showed because of how bad of shape the hoof was in? Yes, but more so because these apps don't let you show it or don't want you to show that type of stuff. You can get community guideline strikes for it if it's too graphic. And in general, they'll just demonetize it anyway. So if it's too bad, then there's really no sense in making the videos at all. But in fact, some of the worst hooves that I ever saw was before I even filmed. But yeah, you couldn't put them on there even if you wanted to. And this platform in particular is about the most stringent possible. If you go back to the very last video that I posted, it was a recheck video, and that video was given a limited monetization rating because of shocking content. Believe it or not, if you haven't seen that video, go watch it and try to tell me what in there is shocking. I have no idea. Then I had it reviewed because of that and was confirmed by a manual review. Hmm, I don't know. So yeah, but yeah, or if you go back a while ago, I had one. Well, this is first couple of years was as a cow with a pedal bone fracture. I could have shown that whole thing, filmed it, but YouTube wouldn't let me. So, Country Mike says, "Peace out. See you later, bud." How often do you use? How often? How often do you see a bad hoof? Um, Probably depends on your what's the word? Characterization of a bad hoof. I mean, as far as having to wrap or block something, I probably this time of year you're going to see more. In fact, today I only trimmed had a short day today, trimmed 11 of them, and had three of them needed to be blocked, believe it or not. And three of those, and I mean, and all of those cows are pasture cows. So what you would not think, right? Pasture cows, no problems, but they're rock problems, right? You get small crack in there, and then you get rocks in there can puncture, and so all three of them today. So today, if you were to look at today's averages, yeah, quite high, right? But in general, no. And especially when you're dealing with cooler temperatures, if I trim 100 or I don't trim 100 cows in a day, but 50 cows a day, I might have two that'll have problems. That all, and it varies by farm. How do you sharpen your knives? Stone, grinder, strop, or sander? I use a rubber abrasive wheel on a bench grinder, and then polishing wheel on the other side. So get get the take all the scratches and nicks out of it with that rubber wheel, and then polish it with the cloth wheel. Have you ever watched the movie Temple Grandin? I have not watched her movie. I've seen some videos with her, and um, I met her. Yeah. Hmm. Have you ever thought about starting a trimming school? Yes, but only in the back of my mind. Not, I've not taken any steps to seriously do that, and I don't know that I necessarily would. I may train somebody at some point, but that's about it. Do you own your own company? Yes, a couple of them. As far as the hoof trimming business, I own that, and then I own the social media content and all those the businesses associated with that. So it's actually more if you were to think you break them down. But how long do you study? How long do you study to become a hoof guy? I trained for 3 months of on the farm training, apprenticeship type training, and then you learn as you go, right? Kind of thrown in the fire. Um, but if you get the basics with that and then learn slowly, you're going to learn more about each type of problem over time, as far as especially on ways to prevent it and the cause small things that can cause these things that you may not ever think of, or you'll see things you've never thought of or never seen before. Um, but in general, for me, it was about 3 months of general training. There are most of the courses you take are going to be less than that. The actual, that I would say hoof trimming courses outside of apprenticeships. You have to keep educating yourselves about hoof trimming. Yes, I read research all the time. Look up anything new and try to see a lot of the stuff. A lot of research is focused around the Dutch hoof trimming method, which hooves are shaped or trimmed differently in that. So it's hard to go one for one as far as my hoof trimming method, comparatively, because you're going to have pressure type problems are going to be different between the two based on the way that the soles are trimmed and things like that. So, but you can do a lot of the research is based on that trimming method when it comes to the actual like modifications of hoof trimming. But as far as lesions and infectious treatment and things like that, yeah, there's always new stuff being worked on. So it's good to keep up on that. You can find those online too. Some of them, you can find the abstracts online. You want to really get into the numbers of the research and get down to the breakdowns and stuff. Then some of those you have to pay for. But dew claws, when is it necessary to trim and can they become infected? How to treat? Um, Dew claws is kind of they don't really provide a function anymore to the cow. So unless they're a hindrance, you don't necessarily have to trim them. And a lot of times I don't trim them. But if they're getting a little bit longer, then yeah, I'll trim those down. generally the length. If a cow, how do I say this? If the if they have decent hoof moisture, normal, somewhat normal hoof moisture, and meaning they're not dirty up high on their legs, then those dew claws are going to shed naturally, just like a hoof would. Um, but sometimes that's not the case, so you got to trim them. And yeah, they can get dermatitis in them as well. I've got some videos on that. If you go back and look, they'll actually start to grow deformed because of that when they grow. It's kind of interesting to see. But yeah, you own any cows yourself? I do not. I own no cattle, and I don't really have the room for it. So I probably won't ever own cattle. Maybe one for my daughter's been working on me to get a Highland, a miniature Highland, but she's got a lot of work to do yet. So probably not. From a medical point of view, dealing with severe lesion pain, for example, is out of the scope of your work or something you use some products besides salicylic acid. Dealing with severe lesion pain. No, well, as far as treating it beyond that, no, I don't. But yeah, that farmers and vets can administer different things for pain. That's not in my realm or in my wheelhouse, so I avoid that. They've asked about a topical like a lidocaine type stuff. I'm not sure. There are some things that are used for that, but I'm not sure how much they actually do when it comes to the trimming I do. I try to avoid the problems themselves, so I'm not convinced at how much that would actually help. But that was kind of a convoluted answer to that question. How's your ankle foot that you injured about a year ago? It's actually almost 2 years to the date. Couple months shy, or a couple weeks shy of 2, or past, couple years beyond 2 years. But anyway, a couple weeks past 2 years. That leg, ankle and leg just above that is still swollen, believe it or not. And when I first did it, they said, yeah, you can have swelling for years beyond that. And I'm like, maybe not me though, right? It is. It's still twice the size. Well, not twice. It's still much larger than my normal ankle. Have you ever encountered a farm that neglects their cattle? Nope. Breeding obviously plays into it, but is there a breed that you have noticed are less prone to issues than others? Yes. Jerseys in general, just because they're smaller, right? So because they're lighter, the concrete is going to have less of an effect on their hooves. But that's just pressure and weight. What's your favorite beer? Favorite beer is, believe it or not, Bush Light, but that's not this. Drinking pop tonight because I got to work in the morning and because it's Thursday, 5 o'clock somewhere, right? It is actually 5 o'clock somewhere. It's 6:05 here right now. So yeah, good stuff. What else you guys got? Any more questions? Been wondering what made you pursue this type of job or career in the first place? I've worked on dairy farms my entire life from when I was a little tiny kid all the way up. And then in college, I was working on one as well, milking cows on a larger dairy. And that's how I met the hoof trimmer that eventually trained me. He would come every couple of weeks, and that was part of my job was to help him get cows in the chute and lift up feet and do things like that. So I got to kind of get a taste of it over a couple year period. So I could see how it worked and thought, hey, I want to own my own business anyway. It's kind of an interesting job. Wayne Went, the guy that trained me, he was cool. It seemed to have a heck of a good time. So I'm like, I don't know, maybe this will be fun, and I can do all the things I want to do, work on farms and own my own business, and so why not? I was 23. I said, I'll go for it. So I went and got a loan to buy my truck and my chute, and I just started. So, and I haven't turned back. And I'm glad I did it, right? Because I don't think as you get older in life and with more responsibilities, it's a lot harder to jump into something new like that. But I was I was not married, single, no kids, 23. Thought, why not? What's the biggest cow you worked on? Biggest cow. Cow, I'd say maybe 1800, 1900. I had a herd one time that was of cows that was all giants. So it was kind of a regular thing to trim 1,700-pound animals, believe it or not. Now, if you're talking about bulls too, about 2,200 is the biggest bull I've trimmed. Do you have to trim calves' hooves? Nope. Generally, if a calf has got a bad hoof, it's a structural problem or a deformity of some sort that I can't fix. Maybe she got stepped on by her mom, things like that, where you might have a break there or something. I can't fix that. So, and a lot of times when they're young and their bones are malleable, you can get a deformity in there and not necessarily, you know, cause a break or anything like that, but just make it deformed. And then that is going to change the way the hooves are. But it's nothing, anything that I can really fix, right? So, but that's rare. Like I say, I haven't seen as far as calf type deformities. That's a rare thing. Usually, if it is, they'll get like real stiff front legs where they'll, I don't know how to explain it. They almost want to knuckle over on their feet. But well, once again, that's a problem that I can't fix, unfortunately. Cool to see you. Your mom cracks up when you watch my videos and talk about hooves. Yeah, I can imagine. I'm sure you get quite the stares. Ah, well, some of your favorite videos to watch. Yeah, that's something that I would have never envisioned that. When I made it, I thought it was going to be an educational thing. Maybe something that was you'd make, 10, 15 videos and that'd be the end of it basically. Right? You'd go through things. I thought it would be a lot harder to create content that people would watch. Maybe the first ones when they haven't really seen it, I just didn't expect it to be as widely viewed and enjoyed as it did. So, which is cool. You were raised on a dairy farm in the 70s. Me too. Well, late 70s. I was born in the late 70s. 80s, I should say, probably. Raised in the 80s. Lately, you've cut your videos short and we don't get the cow walking away anymore. Can we have that back? Sure, I can do that. So, the way I have to play with different things with video creation, right? Some things you might not notice from the viewer perspective, and because of the way algorithms work and things like that. So, which is they constantly change and you're constantly learning. But some of the metrics that they go by is how, as far as how often your video, or to, what's the correct terminology, the impressions that you get based on your video is the percentage of watch time and how much the video is enjoyed based on that, things like that. But if you have a spot in your video that is consistently where people drop off, then that can kill the watch time on your videos. So what would happen is if I looked at my analytics, I can see that while some of you, and maybe there's quite a few, want to see that cow walking away, there is a, I don't know if you can hear that trailer just drove by, but there is a distinct drop off as soon as I get done trimming that hoof. Not even the wrapping and blocking. When I get through the nitty gritty of the trim, boom, that's when a huge drop off happens. So you try to limit the length of your videos beyond that. So I try to. What happened here? Are you back? Are we back live? It said I lost connection. Can you hear me? Or am I gone again? Oh yeah, you're here. We're back. Yeah, I don't know what happened there. All of a sudden, I just said your connection's lost, and I'm like, what? So I was answering someone's question. Um, I forgot what the question was because now I'm sidetracked. Any of you ever say you kind of look like Nick Schwartz? No, but I know who he is. I don't drink nearly as much as he does. He is funny. I don't sound like Nick though. Have you ever not been able to save the claw or clear the infection, whereby the farmer or vet had to make the decision to remove the claw? Yes. Claw amputation is far less common now than it used to be because most of the problems we run into, we catch them a lot earlier. So you don't have devastation happening in that claw that eventually just degrades the bone and everything like that. That has to be removed. Even in cases where the pedal bone has problems, like in toe tip necrosis, even in those situations, we can therapeutically trim that cow to make her comfortable and make her create a situation that's actually better, even with that ailment, to not amputate. If that makes anything. We keep them pretty comfortable. So. Yes, it skipped for a bit, but back now. Yeah, I don't know what happened. I just noticed I'm watching two screens and I had one dropped off all of a sudden. I looked and it said unable to connect. You were connected, and I don't know why it's lost. I got great Wi-Fi here, so I don't understand that, but I never understand a lot of the things technology-wise when it goes wrong. Have you ever had the whole hoof capsule come off with a few swipes of the knife? Yes and no. Yes, it did, but this claw was injured. This heifer had got her foot caught and in a feeder, and she had lifted and was pulling that foot out and actually cut that claw, almost removed it completely, and so it was just barely hanging on. And so yeah, when it came to me, there was just a little bit of skin hanging on, and actually that was early on in my career too. So I pulled that capsule, took it off, so it was nothing but corium and then the pedal bone inside, inside that. So it's just that little V shape sitting there. And I thought, man, I thought there's no way this heifer is going to make it. But I blocked her. I double blocked it, wrapped it as if, I would normally. And I told the herdsman, I'm like, I told him what happened, what I found. She had known that I got caught in a feeder. That's how I knew this heifer was brought from their heifer facility on a different farm. But I said, you're probably gonna have to, probably gonna have to sell her, put her down because I've never seen anything like this, but I can't imagine she's gonna walk on it. Didn't think much of it, trimmed the rest of the day, came back the next 2 weeks later, and she's like, yeah, she's walking really well. So I went and looked, sure enough, she was walking around almost like normal, obviously with a double block. They're gonna walk a little bit funny because of that. Like, oh man, that's pretty crazy. About 6 weeks later, maybe, she's like, yep, you want to look at it again though, just to check and see it? I'm like, sure. So I was kind of interested to see what it would look like. So I picked it up and it was starting to grow from the top down, growing a new hoof wall over the top of that. It was amazing to see. I'm like, holy cow, is this actually going to grow a new capsule around this whole claw? And it did. Believe it or not, it grew it back to where you could tell there was something that had happened to it, but you would have never assumed that it ripped that capsule completely free. So yeah, it's you can you can see some things sometimes, and you're like, there's no way that cow is going to heal. The first time I saw a pedal bone fracture and pulled a piece of bone out of the bottom of a claw, I thought the exact same thing. And those heal up amazingly well. Hi, can I have a shout out? My name is Logan. Hello, Logan. What's happening, buddy? How about euthanasia? Has it ever gotten so severe to that point? Not anymore. Usually, we catch things nowadays soon enough that you're not typically gonna have to euthanize a cow because of a hoof injury or a hoof problem. The most dangerous, I would say, are the infectious ones that can move up into the leg, like foot rot, foul. Those that bacteria can get up in the leg and cause severe damage, not just in the claw itself or the hoof itself, but into the leg and basically prevent mobility, which ultimately kills the cow. Hello, Blake. Yes, you can see my mug. Ah, you use wait. I know you use acetyl salicylic acid. How does that heal a wound? I use salicylic acid, which is the precursor to making aspirin, right? Um, salicylic acid is actually aspirin. And so what salicylic acid does is it's got a low pH, so it will kill bacteria as far as that goes. But it works so if there's necrotic tissue and things like that, it's used as an exfoliant. So it'll pull away the dead tissues and things like that. And then it also, because it is similar to or precursor to aspirin, it may provide some, some pain relief as well. So that's why I use those. See the Wisconsin hat, fellow Packers fan? Yes, this is Twigs, Wisconsin, and Shawano, not far from the Green Bay Packers. And yes, Packer fan, hardcore. Try to make a game every well, I'll try. Have made a game every single year for probably 5 or 6 years now. I think this will be our sixth year, maybe fifth or sixth year straight. So, yep, love the Packers. Watch them every Sunday. Not sure about this year. Cautiously optimistic, put it that way, about the Packers. We'll see. How did you get into this career? I worked on a large dairy when I was going to college. Well, large for that time, and that's how I met their hoof trimmer. Part of my job was to help them or help him, and it transitioned. I asked him if he'd train me when I graduated college, and he agreed. So that's what happened. I got done, and literally that same weekend, I started training to be a hoof trimmer. Oddly enough, after I had just spent all that money on a college education. Yeah. What's something you wish someone told you in your 20s? Um, 20s. Try to be, eh, what's the best way to say it? Probably being conscientious about how and how you approach things, right? Don't be haphazard with your, whether it be your work or your life or things like that. Try to money. Try to be, you know, be disciplined. I tend to be when I was younger, I was kind of like, whatever. I got plenty of time to figure things out throughout your whole life, right? And then once you get married and start having kids, time starts flying so fast that you can't hardly keep up. And we're like, man, if I had my 20s back, I would have focused a lot harder in my 20s, even more so, and then I would be even further ahead than I am right now. But I'm always critiquing myself that way. So I'm probably I'm probably more I was probably more focused than a lot of 20-year-olds already, but I can still see where I could have improved. What was the most disgusting, stinky, ugly hooves you have dealt with during your time as a trimmer? Disgusting, stinky, ugly. Well, years ago we used to see digital dermatitis that was I wish I had pictures of that stuff back then. Before I started making videos on here, I didn't even have a smartphone. I had a flip phone up until almost until the time that I started making videos. But so I didn't have any pictures of these. But digital dermatitis, if it goes completely untreated and has the right conditions, it will basically encapsulate that entire area around the hoof and even all the way up and around the dew claws themselves. So imagine a digital dermatitis lesion that's about this thick, right? I'm not joking when I say that. That thick that completely covers the entire area from the hoof all the way to the dew claws. That's some of the stuff you see, and it's just like, holy cow. It would take multiple treatments of tetracycline powder to make that shrink and get that back to normal skin again. If you see dermatitis now and you look at it, you'd be like, oh, that's a bad one. Oh, it is the dermatitis we deal with now. It's pesky. It's a pain in the butt. It's irritating to the cow, but it's nothing like what we used to see. Incredible. That's probably the worst. And the foul and foot rot that I'd run into, where farmers didn't understand what was happening. And that bacteria would slowly get up into the foot and leg, and that foot would just basically continue to just swell and balloon up until it got to a point where there's really nothing you can do with it anymore. So luckily, we've got that all. I shouldn't say completely, but every farm that I trim on, we catch that stuff and address it way, way before that could ever happen. So, what did you major in college? I got a degree in biology with an ecology focus from Winona State University. How old are your kids and do they go to work with you? My oldest one does, Jackson. Yeah, and he's 17, but younger ones, no. You know, How did you go to a flip phone to posting editing videos on the internet? It's impressive to make that change quickly. It was a pain in the butt. I'm not joking. Yeah, I had to learn everything, literally everything. The way that I chose the, the editing software to pick was how easy it was to use. So I started with the stuff, I got an iPhone and started with the editing software on the iPhone. That's because that's basically as easy as it could possibly be. Um, right? Everything's intuitive with that app. So that's what I started editing with because it was easy. And I didn't, if you go back to my beginning videos, I didn't know what I was doing. Those videos are terrible. But even still, the editing that I do now is not high tech by any means or advanced as far as editing goes. It's pretty basic. But yeah, it was almost a crippling thing at first because it took so long to make one video. And then when you're first starting out, nobody knows about you and no one's following you. So literally, you create a video, and if it gets 10, 20, 30 views, you're thinking, okay, I got 30 views. That's more people that are in my circle that even know that I'm making videos. So somebody that I don't know is actually watched this video, which is reassuring to you when you're first starting. I remember the first time that I had a video that what I called viral at the time in my mind was viral was up to 3,000 views. And I was like, oh yeah, something's happening with this video because I don't know 3,000 people. And then I would watch it, it would go up like 100 to 300 videos or 300 views a day. I'm like, this thing is flying, right? Now, as you get, the more you get into it and as you build, that changes the way your perspective on things like that. But at the time, that was massive. And if going back and looking at my videos, I can see why people didn't watch it. What pushed you into the content creation sphere from a niche job like yours? To educate people or something else? Yes, to educate people. I saw a video on Facebook of a cow being trimmed, and it was depicted as torture. Basically, this cow was in the chute, and she was clearly in pain, and these people were doing nothing to help her. When in actuality, obviously, they were trimming their hooves. So I thought, well, somebody at least needs. And the comment section was just blown up with people that were appalled by this. Like the whole idea that a machine was built for this to torture cows is ridiculous. Well, yeah, it should have been ridiculous, right? So I thought if I could make videos that people can learn from and figure out not only just the videos themselves, but what the problem is, why the problem happens, and why we work on them to prevent the problems. That was the general like framework of how I wanted the videos to go. Obviously, I figured out over time what videos people like, so I made more of those types of videos. But yeah, it was from an educational perspective. Have you ever trimmed horses or any other hooves? I've trimmed one goat in my whole life, and that's it. I've been asked to trim buffalo and oxen, and never a horse. I've been asked if I trimmed horses by farmers, and that's a hard, quick, fast no. I don't want it. I don't want. The guy that trained me has trimmed some horses in his shoot before. Okay, what else? So yeah, you made alive. Hello, Stacy. Yes, you always say you just missed that. So now you got the time right. 6:30. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, I thought people would be sick of my videos by now and not want to watch hoof trimming videos anymore. I thought it would be something that was maybe people watch it for a while, but then once you've seen it, and that would be the end of it. So I'm glad that you're all here. I'm thankful, and yeah, that's kind of what these lives are for too. Is I can't keep up with all the comments on all the platforms anymore, so it's a great way to answer all these questions and kind of have the one-on-one type of experience with the chat, even though it's not really one-on-one. Um, but I'd be able to answer questions and stuff like that because it's hard to do that when you have all the different comments and all the different places and you're trying to keep up with it all. It's you just can't do it. Have you ever been kicked by a cow? Yes, many times, many times. You try to now. I'm in a position with the way I set up my trailer and stuff that I'm not in that danger zone where I'm going to get kicked very often, just because, and the way that I move cattle, you tend to be pretty safe. They're not. I'm never generally is a situation where I'm moving one cow at a time, where I'm in a position behind her that she could kick me. So back in the day, though, that's how I did it. I would have a pen of cows, and I'd bring one into the chute at a time. You're much more likely to get kicked that way. Nate, why doesn't DD spread from your gloves? Um, so digital dermatitis is present in their environments all the time. So they're exposed to it every single day, all the time. The way that it takes hold is it has to have a that layer of skin has to be compromised in some form, and then that bacteria can get in it and basically start to colonize and create a lesion. But so that bacteria is already there. Me touching it, even if I had that active bacteria on my gloves, probably isn't going to cause an infection because if it would have, it probably would have already. You know, so they actually did a research study on the transmission of digital dermatitis from hoof trimming tools. They didn't really see a strong correlation between the two of it spreading from cow to cow in that fashion. So remember when this shoot was new and you had to get used to it? How many previous shoot setups have you had? Just one prior to this one. Yeah, it was a drastic change. You wouldn't think that a shoot made by the same company in generally the same form would be that much different, or yeah, different. But and it's really not in its function, but just in like the different placement of the levers. Like instinctively I would reach for where all my controls were on my old shoot, and I had trimmed with that one for 20 years, so everything, all that muscle memory from 20 years was really hard to rewire. This new shoot I can move a lot faster than I could with my old shoot in theory, but in practice, I was so slow with the new one when I first got it. It was frustrating for me, and that's why, yeah, even in that, I think in that video, in one of my couple of my first videos, I talked about how that transition was tough and how I didn't really like the shoot when I first got it because of that. Now I love it, obviously, um, but yeah, it was frustrating. And the first day I got it, I wanted to go. I have this farm that is really easy to trim, fast trims, so I wanted to bring the chute there, and so that the cows weren't waiting too long going through the trimming process. I knew fast trims would give me time to kind of get the flow down, and I could keep the cow numbers lower on that day to do that. Well, I get there that day, and he's like, "Nope, I'm giving you 45." And I'm like, "Oh." So not only that, I had to do my normal trimming day that I always do, only try to figure the shoot out on the very first day that I had it. So needless to say, I was slow, but maybe it was better that way. I've ever cow defecate while in the chute. Every single one does. That's not a joke. Every single. I should probably do a video just on that, right? I don't think people appreciate how much a cow eats, and then therefore how much they poop because of that. Literally every single cow that enters does that, and then it builds up underneath my chute, and I have to scrape it and clean it out probably maybe 4 or 5 times a day because it'll build up high enough that it goes through the grates in the chute when it's on the ground. So and it makes a mess. But yeah, it's kind of a I don't know. It's their reaction to us being messing with them, and that they just want to get back at us. I don't know. But yeah, cows eat about 100 pounds of forage a day. That translates into about that much poop. No joke. Might sound weird, but when you trim a hoof, it sounds like you're peeling potatoes. Oddly satisfying, yes. Probably looks like it too. I get the number of comments that I get that says, "I for the longest time I thought you were working on a potato. Didn't even realize it was a hoof." So yeah, KVK has flippers. Why yours? Why mine doesn't? Yeah, I don't. I think I would hate the flippers honestly because of the way they position that foot. I'm not sure, especially the way I trim now. I'd have to redo the way I trim a little bit, and I would not like it. as far as the getting used to it once again with those flippers. I don't like the way that it pushes that foot up. The idea of that is to so that that paddle is touching the dorsal wall on both of them. But I don't trim the way that I trim. I don't trim flat. I trim to the natural sole. So it's hard to explain, but for a Dutch trimmer, they trim that sole completely flat across the bottom. But if you were to look at the sole in if you were to take the sole off and look at it, the cow has a natural angle built into her hooves so that when she steps, then there's like a shock absorption feature, kind of like the way shocks work in a car, right? It'll load, and then when that sole is on the ground, it will actually be flat. But the sole from the dorsal wall is not flat. So it's hard to explain. If you understood what I'm saying, it would make more sense. But so in order to trim the natural way or the to the natural sole thickness on that, it would be difficult the way that that foot is held. Long story short, but so yeah, the flippers might work or look like they would work good for, and they do for some, but I don't think it would work for my style very well. I don't think I would like it. Someone was smoking some good. Yeah, I think so. I think a lot of the a lot of the comments that refer to the potato, I think that's what it is too. Yeah, they might be impaired as they're watching videos. Seems to be a favorite of those as well. How much does the crush cost? My shoot cost. This one was 61,000 brand new. When I first bought my first shoot, I also purchased new in 2002. That one was 31,000. So what is the oldest cow or bull you've trimmed? Also, does the hoof change significantly with age? Um, okay, the oldest one that I trimmed, confirmed based on papers, was a 19-year-old Jersey cow. Now, I had another one that I trimmed. This was a beef cow. The guy claimed that she was, that he, and he said he knows for sure that she was 29 years old. That seems very old for a cow, but yes, the cow looked like she was 29 years. I mean, she looked ancient. So I, I don't know. Put it that way. 19 is the oldest confirmed age that I know for sure. Um, what was the other question there? Was how long do they live? That yeah, they can. That's not the question though. Oldest cow bull. Oh, and does the hoof change significantly with age? Yes. So over time, so any type of problem, especially pressure-related problems where you have ulcerations or hemorrhaging, can actually change the pedal bone on the inside of the foot. Something we can't see, but we know based on looking at cadaver feet. So as a cow gets older, those little problems that she has in the hoof can actually you get like calcification happening to that pedal bone. So over time, the feet can start to lose shape or have more problems because of that. So they're going to change in that respect. The other thing, which is hard to get across on video, but what makes sense is older cows have a harder time or take a longer time to get over certain problems. So a a young heifer that may get some toe necrosis or a bad type of infection or lesion in her hoof, those will heal really, really fast. Whereas a 6, 10-year-old cow, those can take a lot longer to heal just based on her age. Jerseys give great cream. They do. They have a higher butterfat content than Holsteins do in general. You list yourself as a hoof trimmer on your income tax forms. Yes, that's what it is. I'm not sure the IRS knows what that is or cares necessarily, but yeah, self-employed as a hoof trimmer. Um, yeah, trimming does remind you of peeling potatoes. It does. Especially as I'm doing it, I'll get some big chunks and I'll be like, oh, that looks kind of like a potato wedge. That one. So I think of that now, but I think of that now only because of all the comments that I've gotten about it. But all the different analogies, food analogies that have come from that. Have you ever had any cows with three claws on one hoof? I have not seen that before. I've seen other people have posted pictures of that. I've never seen it in person. I did. There was a farm when I was a kid near us that had a steer that had a that had well third leg had a third front leg, a fifth leg. It was growing out of its shoulder on its front leg, so it actually had a whole another leg. It did wasn't obviously functional, and it was a weird deformed one, but it did have it. I feed silage to beef cattle in central Kentucky when eating out of a trough. Would you rather the cattle be standing on concrete, dense grade gravel, or larger rock? My cattle are 90%, 95% pasture. Yes, concrete, 100%. The problem with concrete and beef cattle or cattle in general anywhere is that wherever that concrete ends, there's going to be a mud hole, right? I'm sure you already know that. But yeah, if they're going to be standing in one spot, the problem with gravel and rocks and stuff like that is it's uneven and it's going to tend to cause them to shift their weight, and they're never really comfortable when they're standing there, especially bigger breaker rock type stuff. Try to avoid that completely. That could be sharp and cause problems in general, just because it's almost impossible to stand on that level. So yeah, in a situation where, especially if they're on concrete or on pasture 95% of the time, that little bit of time that they're standing at the trough, not going to be a big deal. The way we see pressure problems with cattle is when they're in or on cement all the time on confinement, right? It's just like us standing on cement or in uncomfortable shoes for an extended period of time. You can feel that problem, or that, I don't want to say damage, but that uncomfortableness working into you just on that. So try to think about that as the cow standing on it. Short period of time, no big deal. It's easy to keep clean. It's easy. It's level. So it's probably the best thing. In fact, I would say it is the best thing in a situation like that. If you were really concerned about it, you could put a layer of, they make a rubber roll that you could put across that and fasten it, and that way you wouldn't have to deal with that either. But when you first started, have you gotten sick from the rotten smells from the hooves? Nope. I mean, I don't like them, but I don't get it doesn't bother me. You get used to it. In fact, some of the stuff you can smell before you even pick the foot up, so you know what you're going to be dealing with just based on the smell of it. That's a little bit, you beyond the normal person's not going to be able to do that. But after a while, especially things like foot rot and digital dermatitis have a distinct smell, so you can tell them pretty quickly. Is hoof trimming in high demand? I imagine it's hard to find people who can do that. It's If you're in a area with a lot of cattle, then yeah, there'll be a hoof trimmer around there, right? Especially in Wisconsin, dairy state, there's hundreds of hoof trimmers in Wisconsin. In my area, just in my local area here, there's 4 or 5 of us that cover this area. We don't have, you know, we all have built our businesses at different times in different areas, so we have farms picked up in the areas. So we cross paths. It's funny. There'll be I'll pass, not so much anymore, but when I was traveling north of here about an hour, I would pass 2 or 3 rigs and we're going opposite directions. It's like we could only do this better logistically, right? You're coming down to my area to trim, and I'm going up to where you live to trim. We should probably figure that now. Everything that I trim is closed. So, what percentage of infected hooves are from pasture cows? So, well, that's kind of a tricky question. So, well, like today, I trimmed on a pasture herd, and I trimmed, it's a small farm, but I trimmed 11 of them, um, and 11 of them, and I had 4 blocks on 11. No, yeah, 3 blocks, 3 blocks on 11 cows. Yeah, 3 blocks on 11 cows today. So, and they're all pasture cows. So, but because of rocks. Now you go to, um, if you look at oh, thank you for the super chat, KW Newer. Oh, and on target EDC training, $20. Thank you. That's awesome. Those all just popped up right now all together. That is sweet. Thanks, guys. Where was I now? Oh, pasture cows. So in general, pasture cows are going to have different types of problems with rocks and foot rot and digital dermatitis, things like that, getting debris and stuff stuck in their hooves, rocks caught in between their claws, things like that. So you're going to have different problems. They're going to have less pressure problems, if that makes sense. White line issues and ulcer issues. You're going to see less, unless it comes to in the spring. You might have when the flush of new grass, you might get some ulcers, but generally speaking, it's going to be um, you're going to see different things. But pasture cows still have their own sets of problems they got to deal with. As far as the percentage of pasture farms that I trim on, I have about 25 farms total, and I would say maybe 8 of those are full-time pasture summer farms. So, of the videos you see, you can tell which ones basically, like the weird ones where I have rocks that are caught in bad spots. Um, Today, the ones I did today are rock related. You'll see those. Um, so, yeah. Do you find Wisconsin cows have different problems than other states' cows? Well, I've only trimmed in Wisconsin and Minnesota, but in the same area here, so I don't really know. I know different areas deal with a lot more digital dermatitis than we do, and different types of problems with arid climates like um, uh, dorsal fissure, wall fissures, things like that, vertical fissures in hooves. We don't have to deal with that too much sometimes in our beef cows here, but not in dairy where they do in other areas. So it all depends. Brisbane, Australia. What is your most memorable hoof trim that you gave the most level of job satisfaction? And hello, Brisbane. What time is it in Brisbane right now? Evening here, coming on morning there. I would guess. The most satisfaction would be, believe it or not, I think I even have the one, at least one that I've done last since been doing videos is one that I have on film that I trimmed. And she couldn't hardly walk, wouldn't even put her foot down on the ground. She basically walked three-legged, and we trimmed her, and you could see she put that foot down in the chute, and she was like feeling it. You could tell, like, oh, I wonder if she's going to walk on this. Well, I let her out of the chute. She walked without a limp. And I was like, holy cow. You could tell just in the pep in her step, the way she was walking, how coming in, she wouldn't even touch that foot on the ground at all. And leaving was just like looking around, just like completely carefree. That's probably the most where you could see the most definitive change immediately. And that was just that claw had a bunch of, you could tell it was pedal bone pressure on the inside, all the different hemorrhage spots throughout that claw. But even still, it was it was satisfying. It wasn't a crazy graphic or crazy looking trim per se, but the way that she reacted, that's what made it memorable. Put a face to the name, you got it. Yes, thanks again, guys, for the super chats. That's super cool. Love it. Are you on farms every day on call, or do you have a routine time you come for trimmings unless it's an emergency call? Yeah, most of my farms, what I do, especially the ones that are larger now, are set up on a set schedule. Some of them might be every 2 weeks, every three, every month, and then I've got some that are every 3 months or 4 months where we trim the entire group or the entire herd of cows. I've got three of them that are on 3 time a year trims. So every 4 months, I trim every cow on the entire farm. And then I've got other farms that are smaller where I trim them twice a year and trim spring and fall. So that's kind of how I break it up. Those smaller ones I'll trim, like I said, in the spring and fall. But most of the other ones are scheduled. Unless you have a situation like this time of year where about a week ago, 2 weeks ago, about 2 weeks ago, no more than that. Well, 3 weeks ago now, I had to go on an emergency call and trim a cow that wouldn't put weight on a foot, right? Because in the summer months as it gets hot out, cows can't get rid of heat the same way we do, so they have to stand up to try to get that body heat away. And when they do that, they're on their feet longer and they're going to have more hoof problems. So this is abscess season, as we say in as far as temperature wise for hoof trimmers. But 10 a.m. in Brisbane. Yeah, that makes sense. I always figure that's a halfway across the world. Well, yeah. Ever thought about ever thought about trading areas with other YouTube trimmers? It would be cool to see you trimming in other areas. Yeah, in other parts of the world. Yeah. It probably it'd be interesting. It looks very similar. Like I can't imagine that, especially cows that are raised inside, that they would be that much different. But yeah, it'd be cool to see. Do you ever imagine people would find hoof trimming so fascinating to watch? No, not in my wildest dreams did I think that as many people would watch it. When it when it first started kind of taking off, like back in the times when I would get 2, 3,000 views on a video, my end goal, like if I made in my own mind had made it, it was 100,000 subscribers, right? That first, whatever it is, silver play button or whatever you got back then. That was it. Like if I got to that, I'd be like that's as high as you can ever get. And then, when I figured out why people were watching it, then I was like, oh, maybe, it could go higher. And then it all kind of took off. So no, I would have never expected people to watch hoof trimming and enjoy it the way they do. As far as it being therapeutic and things like that, I would have never thought that. Or just listening to my voice, those types of things. No, not in my wildest dreams. Has there ever been a case where you couldn't help the cow at all? Yep. Especially with those, like I was talking about earlier, back in the day, where those hoof rot foul situations where the cow's leg would swell. There's absolutely nothing I can do about that. Zero. Say that that's a complete vet thing and just hope and pray that the antibiotics and anti-inflammatories can bring that down so she stays mobile. You're like Bob Ross with living canvas. Yeah, kind of what it is, right? Why don't you work on horses? The anatomy is different, and so there's different steps in the hoof trimming process, and I'm not trained to do it. And a hoof, like, you can see the differences as far as in a cow having two claws, a little bit of an imperfection in one can make up for the other one, right? That's kind of what those claws do. They allow some some movement between them as the cow walks. A horse, they're walking on one, so that needs to be trimmed to make sure it's working exactly how it's supposed to work, or it's going to create major problems for that horse. So I avoid it. I know I've seen or heard about problems when it comes to laminitis and things like that with horses, but I just don't want to mess with it. Easiest way to put it. If I was trained, that'd be completely different, but I'm not. What's the worst hoof injury ailment that you've seen a cow or bull actually recover from? Pedal bone fractures. Yeah, those are the craziest to me. In that, that's how the weight is transferred from the cow down to the foot itself, and that bone can break, and it is the cow naturally expels that broken hoof from the bottom of her hoof, and then it heals back over. That to me is baffling, and it's horrendous when you see it, but they heal from that, and it's amazing. So yeah, those tend to be the worst ones where you get sepsis almost inside there, um, because of that, and it's just a mangled mess of tissue, basically. For lack, I know it sounds gross, but that's when you open them up, that's what it looks like. And just by getting that debris out of there, that foreign material, it'll start to work like it's supposed to again. So yeah, why won't vets give you the spray? That spray. I'm guessing you're talking about like an antibiotic spray. They will if you need spray an antibiotic spray here, they can. The way that it works is, at least in the United States now, they passed some legislation. I don't know if it was in, I don't know, 2017 or 18, something like that. But any antibiotic stuff had to be prescribed on a per case basis by a veterinarian. So that's why we no longer can get that stuff. JJ, thank you, JJ. Appreciate that. Thanks for answering your questions. Yeah, no problem. That's the beauty of, that's why I love doing these lives in this fashion, is I can answer all these questions. People have them. It can be kind of that one-on-one. So yeah, thanks for joining in, JJ. Appreciate the super chat. Super cool. How much salicylic acid do you use over time? So I buy, um, it's like a, what is it, probably 10-pound bag from Amazon. And it'll probably last, I don't know, maybe do that twice a year. So maybe 20 pounds a year, maybe in that range. So it all depends on this time of year is going to be more so, and how, and more because of dealing with um, more abscess type stuff this time of year. But otherwise, it's mainly used as a, and a lot of the stuff that I use it on, you don't see because it's mixed in with to treat dermatitis. I don't do a lot of dermatitis videos just because, unless it's on corium, unless there's knife work, because generally people don't watch them. I'll do one occasionally just to kind of show how stuff is going on, but, or what I kind of run into on a daily basis. But, and that is the digital dermatitis lesions, the heel type lesions. Those are the one. That's the lesion that I see the most. So, so yeah, about it. What are we at here? Running at 91 minutes, guys. Hour and a half on this live. That's a pretty long one. Is your truck setup and expensive and a custom tuned to your needs and preferences? My truck, no. I buy the most basic models that are built, work truck models. So my truck is a GMC Sierra 2500. I just got a new one recently. But that's what I've used, 2500, but I buy the basic. They have the least amount of stuff in them that you can get. So nothing specialized in the truck. My chute, very specialized, right? But outside of that, it's just I need a bigger truck to pull it because it's heavy. That's about it. Your 6-year-old grandson loves watching you work. I appreciate that. That's my favorite thing ever is when I have kids that are really interested in it. I was at the fair here about a couple weeks ago and had a guy that stopped me, and his kid loves watching the videos. So that to me is super cool, especially when I would have not expected kids to have any interest in it whatsoever, and have them watch it and send. I get letters a lot from kids and little notes and videos from kids pretending to be hoof trimmers. I think that's probably the coolest thing ever. How did you learn how to do this, and how old were you when you started caring for cow hooves? I learned in college. Um, right when I graduated college, I started training. When I was in college working on farms, that's how I was introduced to it, and yeah, that's what motivated me to do it. So I was 23 when I started trimming, so 23 years ago, almost, yeah, a little over 23 years. June of Actually, July is when I started on my own. I was started trimming on my own on his farms in June of that year. So yeah, but yeah, like I said, we're running at an hour and a half, guys. Every month I do these live, so I'm going to wrap this one up. Thank you all once again, the all the super chatters. I appreciate that a ton. Very unexpected and awesome. I'm glad you guys appreciate the time, and I appreciate you guys coming in here and asking your questions and chatting for an hour. So super cool. Like I said, every month I do a live, so hop in here toward the end of the month and kind of look for it. Get the opportunity, hop in, ask your questions, and generally I try to give some heads up. I didn't on this one, but yeah, normally toward the end of the month do these lives. Get in there, ask your questions, and until next time, thanks for watching. And yeah, new video to hopefully tomorrow if I get it done tonight. Otherwise on Saturday. Look for the new videos. And yeah, thanks guys.